I had to stand there with a straight face, turn to my girlfriend at Target, and tell her that I was buying this, along with our groceries. Yeah. Out of all times that I could have come across Drifter Bruce Wayne, the one figure that told myself, that looks ugly, I don't want to get it. I see him in person, I get a very strong and infectious laugh from just looking at the figure, and I thought to myself, you know what, if I am amused this much by just looking at the figure on the shelf, my YouTuber gut instinct told me, bring him home, at least do a review, and see what other people think, and see how I genuinely feel about this figure, because hey, the Drifter bike itself kind of took me off by surprise. Maybe Drifter Bruce Wayne will do the same? Did not mean for that to rhyme, but let's take a look at Drifter Bruce Wayne. I can only imagine that he's going to be making an appearance in the film as it releases very, very soon. So in honor of the release of that movie, I figured, you know what, let's take a slight little comedic jab at one of the more humorous McFarlane toys, which is Drifter Bruce Wayne. So as far as I can tell, this is going to be him at some point in a flashback or something, and gonna show us a little bit, just a sliver of the origin that we've kind of already seen and expected before. So I can only imagine that this is him prior to actually building the cape and cowl and then decking out his own personal motorcycle, which is why we got the Drifter motorcycle as well. And as you can see, he is a hefty, bulky ass figure. Like, this thing is just dense and massive, and frankly quite ugly. Now, you can make the argument that maybe this is the intent, to have him look very, well, for lack of a better term, homeless. And you can see that all the way around with the different textures and creases of the jacket, which is predominantly made out of a rubber piece here in the center portion. In fact, the jacket reminds me an awful lot of the Riddler outfit, where the main portion of the torso here was made out of a rubber piece, and then the arms are made completely molded in plastic, but of course given the little details and textures of the creases for the sleeves to make it seem like it's all one uniform piece. So that's kind of a similar pattern or a similar technique that they applied here with Drifter Bruce Wayne. And overall, the detailing and the paint applications of said pieces is not bad. It's just very husky, very space occupying, in the sense that he's going to be very top heavy. As you can see, he's already kind of sliding in and out of the surface here at the bottom of his feet, but also it's just going to give him some very definitive proportions. I mean, you see his head here, which is tiny by comparison to the rest of his body, but then you see the torso, the limbs, as well as the legs here that are completely covered up by this really multi-padded and multi-textured pair of pants, cargo pants even, with different pockets and creases and dirt and grime. It even looks like there's an additional layer underneath the jacket. It almost looks like a trash bag or something like that. But you can see right here that they also took some other little techniques that they've applied to prior Batman figures, where they have the crotch piece kind of be like its own rubber piece to allow flexibility for the movement of the legs, except they kind of overcompensated a little bit on that crotch piece, that it almost looks like he's got kind of a skirt type thing going on back here, but it's intended, based on the paint applications, it's intended to be part of the pants. So it doesn't look 100% all that great from this perspective. So, you know, you can interpret it how you will, but technically it's meant to be the pants. Wasn't really pulled off all that great. The shoes are pretty standard, as are the hands, which are covered up by these fingerless white gloves. I imagine that he's only using them so that he can take a hold of his bike. And topping off the outfit's going to be this rubber, very glistening hoodie, kind of capping the whole ensemble off. But of course, I cannot move away from the visual representation of this figure without mentioning that face. The one thing that just, you know, it made everybody go crazy on Twitter, especially within the action figure collecting community on Twitter, that I actually closely follow, especially Paternia over on Twitter. A very good account if you want to stay in the know of new McFarlane figures that are coming out when they're available for pre-order. No paid promotion here, just an honest plug, because they're actually very resourceful. And it was actually through them that I found out about Drifter Bruce Wayne here, and I saw that face and thought to myself, nope, nope, not doing it. And yet here I am doing it, covering what's supposed to be Robert Pattinson with the eye makeup and the dirt and the grime, but instead, I thought of myself from the very beginning, and even more so here in person, he looks more like he would be the lead singer of The Cure than he is Robert Pattinson in that movie. But this is the best that McFarlane was able to come up with as far as detailing of the face and the head sculpt. Now, to give them credit where credit is due, the molding and the sculpting of the hair is actually pretty cool. I actually really do like how the hair is designed. Frankly, I don't know what it is, but there's something about the very thick coating of the paint as well as the actual sculpting that I think to myself, okay, that's actually pretty intricate. It's once we get to the face and the eyes that I'm like, all right, you know, you made with what you could, but maybe there wasn't enough reference material of Pattinson without the cape and cowl to have the eyes. I mean, we have that one shot from the trailer, but besides that, there's not really much to go on. So this is what they were able to do. And I understand that that's intended to be dirt on his face, but instead, for me personally, it looks like he's got acne. All right, it doesn't look like. Every time I see his face, I crack up. It looks more like he's like an acne-ridden lead singer of a new wave punk band from the late 80s. Now, I said that I was hoping to be caught off by surprise taking this guy home, despite my affirmation to not wanting to do so when he was first revealed. I would say that the only real surprise to him is actually the articulation. They are still advertising this as having the 22 points of articulation that's usually customary for, or traditional for McFarlane, except I feel like because of the bulkiness of this guy, as well as the workarounds that they had to do with the design as far as the jacket, the hoodie, the cargo pants, and the top heaviness that he's got going on right there, they made some exceptions that I normally don't really see with a McFarlane, or not too often at least. The head still moves 360 degrees. Of course, the way that the hoodie is kind of designed, you have to slant it a little bit upwards when you're starting to move here towards the sides, and it naturally has to be able to move because there's a particular little detail about the head that we'll cover when we get to the latter portion of the video, but it can slightly tilt up and slightly down, except not as much as I'd want to. I mean, he moves very generously down, but towards up, I wish it would kind of flex a little bit better amongst that joint. As far as the shoulders, this is where we start to get our first batch of little differences. Of course, he's got the ball joint here at the top of the arm that allows movement 360 degrees vertically, as well as extending outwards very frivolously. It's actually very flexible as far as it could do that. So no real ratchetiness found there inside of that joint. You could see a little bit of it kind of clicking in and out, but not as much as other McFarlanes have done so in the past. And he does have that extended joint or extended piece to kind of allow a little bit of that shoulder shrug. So you can see a little bit of gapingness going on right there at the top of the shoulder rubber piece and the joint itself, that then allows kind of flexing upwards like you see right there towards that shrugging movement. Then there are these elbows where we get our first major difference. Normally by now I would have covered the bicep swivel, except there is none this time. What they decided to do is pretty much group the bicep swivel with the elbow joint completely together. So if you kind of get a little closer here, you'll notice that you have both the swivel as well as the hinge joint to allow bending of the elbow, and there's unfortunately only one joint of said elbow, so it's not like a double joint like before. So I'll make a tally towards the end of this segment to see exactly how many joints of articulation there really are, and if it really does fulfill that all the way across to that 22 that McFarlane is always boasting for their figures, because here they took away the bicep swivel, but they put it down here. So there is a swivel within the arm, it's just found more closer towards the elbow, and then it does bend at the elbow, but it only bends at about a 90-degree angle and not much further than that, because again, there's only one joint, and because this piece of the bicep is just so thick amongst this bulkiness of the jacket, it's interfering with the rest of the arm, so it's not going to be able to fully bend anyway. I would say even if they threw in that second joint, it's not going to be able to fully bend because of just how massive this bicep piece really is right here because of the way they designed the jacket. So that's pretty much it for the arm, and the same thing could be said for either one. It's the exact same design. Once we get to the wrist, we get a little bit more traditional. You can rotate it 360 degrees. It's a little bit on the stiffer side, only because of the way that this glove is really molded. I don't know what it is, but it is a little tight. However, it could still move up and down amongst that hinge joint right about right there to allow flexibility of the wrist, especially if you're going to be utilizing it with a separately sold accessory that we'll cover momentarily. Then we get to the torso, and this is where things get also a little unique that caught me off by surprise, genuinely, because I've covered other McFarlanes, notably the Three Jokers, Criminal and Clown, where when they had a single rubber torso piece that was meant to be part of an outfit, they completely omitted the articulation because it's going to be like, all right, it's going to be covered, why bother moving it? But Robert Pattinson here, Bruce Wayne, actually has the torso joint that does allow flexibility upwards and crunching inwards slightly. He kind of recedes back to his original position if you give it just a slight little jib right there to kind of get it going back to its original position because of the way that this rubber piece is designed, but the crunch is felt there, so it is in there. You can almost even feel like two joints rather than just one, but I'm thinking it's just one. It's just the way that it's moving that kind of gives off this illusion that there's actually two pieces in there, but it is in there. So even though we got this singular torso rubber piece, the articulation could be found not just in the mid-torso, but also in the waist. He can rotate 360 degrees on the waist, so there's double abdominal joints going on right there to allow flexibility, so that was a pretty warm welcome. Then we get to the legs, and despite the bulkiness of said legs, as you can see right there, there's still quite a decent amount of articulation. The top leg joints are still able to allow the legs to extend forward about that much right there. And then once you get back, you do start to see a breakage in the joint right there that kind of breaks the illusion. You can see the joint inside, but that weird looking rubber piece that was meant to be part of the crotch that is designed to look like the pants, the reason why it's designed like the pants is to then allow something like this, where flexing the leg back then kind of flushes the overall design right here and kind of makes it look a little more natural, but still it could have been done a little better personally. Then the extensions could let the legs to open up almost about that much, and it should do so considering the little feature here. Wow, I just did that. Oh, come on. But basically, extending the legs to the sides like this was come to be expected, considering the usage of this figure with another accessory that, like I said, we'll cover right now in a bit. And because of that accessory, we are then expecting thigh swivels, which are thrown in here with this figure that allow 360 degrees vertical movement right there amongst each of the bulky legs. Of course, the way that they're sculpted, you can instantly tell when they're supposed to be carefully aligned, so you can kind of see the pocket right there lining up with the molding, so you can see when they're supposed to be facing forwards. Of course, you also have these black pockets right here that symbolize the knees, which is the only other joint left here in the leg. And frankly, unlike other McFarlanes, there's only one joint. Similar to the elbow, only one joint found here in the knee area, so it's not going to have that double joint that allows full bending all the way up. It's only going to bend, like I said, similar to the elbow, about 90 degrees before it stops in its tracks due to the way that this plastic is really molded amongst the sculpt of the pants. So as you can see right there, that's the only joint. The one on the left here for me is a little too stiff. The right one is a little bit more generous. Oh, actually, hey, newfound discovery. Never mind. There is a swivel at the top of the knee. There's the other one. I gotta be honest, this is a new thing. I did not notice this before doing the review. I thought that they were gonna omit that from the knees and just reserve it for the elbows, but it turns out it's actually found in there too. So there's actually those two joints found once again, except only one is the one that allows the vertical bending like traditionally found on McFarlane's. At the top of the knee, however, there is another swivel found in there. It's a little stiff, like I said, but because of the bulkiness of the figure, but it is still there. That's interesting. Okay, cool. So there's still two there along with the thigh swivel. So it could be found there. They just made a slight change there, but it's very similar to the elbows from before. And then moving down, we get a little bit more traditional with the ankles. They can rotate 360 degrees, which again caught me off by surprise because of the way that this piece of the pants is molded. I instantly saw this and thought to myself, okay, those ankles are not moving because of the way that this comes in the interference with the ankle. I thought to myself, it's not going to be able to move. Turns out that this is mainly plastic up until we get to this part right here, where it's actually a rubber coating that flexes when you move the ankles. So if you carefully look right there, as I rotate the ankle, you see that part of the pants kind of flexing inwards and outwards along with the foot itself. So that was actually pretty clever. A very nice little insight that McFarlane came up with right here to allow that to happen. Because as soon as I saw this, I thought to myself, oh, well, that's not going to happen. Pivoting up and down is a little limited, but it is found there because of the way that these figures are usually done with the pants like this. It usually doesn't allow too much movement up and down of the ankles. But the toesies are still there. So if you still want to be able to give it that articulation, being able to bend at the toes, it's still found there. So as you can see, the articulation is quite unique than most of the McFarlanes that I've covered thus far. And with that, let's go ahead and tally it up. So they said it was going to be 22, right? Considering how much they've changed around, they might be hitting that actually, especially considering that I've found and discovered these new joints as I reviewed live here in this video. So let's go ahead and do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Wait, what the hell? 22. And then 23. Did I double count? What the hell? Or do they not count the torso one? Do they not count the waist one? Because now I'm counting 23. What the hell? Well, the more the merrier, I guess. Now a drifter cannot drift the world and travel far and wide to find who he really is meant to be without a backpack, which is pretty much the only other accessory that McFarlane went ahead and threw in when you actually purchase the Drifter Bruce Wayne figure here. Of course, I'm going to cover an additional one here, and I know I've been teasing it a lot, but before we do, this is the backpack, and quite frankly, it's just a very rubberized piece of plastic. You have the straps right here, and they do a pretty basic job as far as adding the little details of the straps and the pockets and the different pouches that you can utilize for said backpacking. Would have been nice to have some included details. In fact, this is just so plain brown and so devoid of any texture or color that I think to myself, if there was ever to be a genuine customizing project for me to undertake, it would be to probably give this backpack as like as a proof of concept. And there goes Bruce. But as a way to kind of indoctrinate myself into custom jobs before jumping the gun on an actual figure that I don't want to risk messing up, I think to myself, okay, this is actually a pretty good accessory to test your skills out as far as paint applications and detailings. If you ever want to go ahead and stress your artful skills or your artful muscles, I would say this is probably the accessory to do it on. And to put it on the figure is pretty straightforward. I would probably recommend taking the arms and flexing them backwards and simply just running the straps amongst the shoulders and the arms. Just kind of flex them in there. The rubber itself is pretty flexible, so you don't really have to worry about any kind of like wear and tear or ripping anything apart. So you just kind of take it, flush it amongst his shoulders, move the arms down, and as you can see right there, he's ready to drift. But there's the backpack, and as you can see, yes, it is a little bit on the bulky side, and frankly, I would say the biggest problem is that this makes the figure a whole lot more top heavy than he already was. I was already having difficulty with him standing up to the point where I think I might have to crack open that disc so that I can situate him up proper, but that's of course up to your preference if you want to have that. For me personally, I'm going to go ahead and remove it because as I've been kind of teasing this entire time with this review, Drifter Bruce Wayne here is actually intended to also stand side by side with another drifter, if you will, but not a person, but rather a vehicle. So if you guys have seen my video where I compared the Batcycle to the Drifter motorcycle, which if you guys haven't already done so, check it out after watching this video. You can find it on my channel. But let's go ahead and throw in as a visual comparison the Drifter motorcycle right here. And this is pretty much the vehicle that he is intended to drive. Not necessarily for Catwoman like I did in that video, but frankly for Drifter Bruce Wayne right here. And sure, side by side, they do look good together. What was also thrown in with the Drifter motorcycle accessory was that helmet piece. And in case you haven't seen that video, I will let you know right now, when I covered the motorcycle and I covered this accessory, I noted that this is actually not so much a helmet but a separate headpiece because of the hole that is found right there inside. So I was given the impression that you're supposed to remove Drifter Bruce Wayne's head here and put on the helmet head here to make it look like he's wearing the helmet and he's ready to go on his motorcycle. So let's go ahead and test that out because I've already done that once and I got some things to say. Now, removing Bruce's head is actually rather easy. You just got to give it a quick grip and tug on the head right here. And as you can see, I've already done it a handful of times, so it's a little easier than it was before. There goes The Cure's lead singer. And I do understand that if you guys are customizers or part of the customizing community out there, you can technically take this head and put it on the original Batman, the general Batman figure, and have your own unmasked Batman as opposed to buying a separate figure. But of course, that's at your own risk. I tried to start doing that, but I was getting a little scared because of how much more difficult that Batman head was coming off of the figure. Like, it wasn't coming off as easy as Drifter Bruce Wayne was doing so here with that head. So because of that, I thought to myself, okay, I don't think it's intended to do that. So I'm just go ahead and stop before I risk breaking the figure. But as you can see, the head is mounted on this ball joint right there. So I thought to myself, okay, take the helmet accessory and simply just pop it into that circular hole right there. Unfortunately, it doesn't really pop in. I don't know if it's just my figure or my accessory, but when I press it in, it doesn't do any kind of like sincere pop. It just kind of sits there. So as I press it, you notice right there was no pop. It didn't have like a movement that made it seem like it just simply popped in and it situates there perfectly, and you can toggle it and swivel it and maneuver it like a traditional head. It just kind of sits there. So what I found is that the hoodie piece right here is actually doing most of the gripping to the helmet piece, as you see right there. It's actually the hoodie that is holding the helmet piece in place, and he is gonna be by default looking down because of the way that the helmet perfectly and snugly fits into that crevice with the neck piece and the neck joint and the hoodie piece kind of holding it in place. And the reason why I need to put emphasis on that is because if you try, at least for me, if I try to articulate the head, to like move it up and down, position it, have him turn left or right, it just comes off. It doesn't actually pop in place. It doesn't fit. I don't know what it is, but I've tried multiple times pressing it as hard as possible, and every time I just get nervous because nothing is happening. Nothing pops, nothing clicks into place. It just kind of sits there, and I just get a huge amount of resistance and nothing fits in perfectly. I don't know if it's the way my figure is designed. Right there, he's looking a little bit more up, but again, I can't pose with it. I can't maneuver it in any form or fashion because the head is just gonna come off right there with a slight little piece of a slight little gesture of movement. So because of that, I'm like, all right, this headpiece is once again resorted to just being set dressing for either Drifter Bruce Wayne here or for the motorcycle to just kind of have by the side and still have either Bruce Wayne or Catwoman simply just pose right next to it. Of course, your other option is to then just remove the head, pop the Robert Pattinson head back on, which I just heard right now has an actual satisfying pop when you click it back in. That actually clicked, and look at that. I can actually rotate and pivot and move the head up and down. So yeah, I don't know why, but the helmet piece just doesn't do that. So the helmet piece still, it has no purpose to me whatsoever from the Drifter motorcycle, aside from just being set dressing. Now, off to the side here, if you like to, you can also pose Drifter Bruce Wayne simply just riding the motorcycle. So let me go ahead and get him in a riding stance. And frankly, due to the slight stiffiness of those legs, especially that left one, it is a little difficult to get the legs positioned just right. The arms and the torso was actually no problem, but as you can see right there, I'm having a little bit of difficulty getting him to be in a natural kind of riding position, as you see right there. So there you have Drifter Bruce Wayne looking off into the distance, or at least to his right, since he happens to have the side-eye problem once more. But of course, at this point, we're just going to have to learn to accept that, considering that most of figures in production right now are going to have the side-eye, per Todd McFarlane's request. Aside from that, however, He definitely looks a little bit more easier on our eyes as he kind of sits upon the drifter bike. Nevertheless, I mean, you can kind of get the point by now that Drifter Bruce Wayne is not essential for anyone that's collecting McFarlane figures here, only if you're a completionist or if you want to own the entire Batman line or the Batman line for the new 2022 movie. Or, better yet, if you just want to, I can't believe I'm saying this, but if you want to kind of scalp or salvage Drifter Bruce Wayne here for parts, for lack of a better term, in the sense that you want to utilize his head to then put on an extra Batman head, or if you want to use parts of his pants or his jacket or something like that, just so that you can have some kind of resource to then use in your custom job for a separate figure, or if you just want to give it a touch up, especially with the backpack accessory that I mentioned before, and have that get touched up or dolled up with the different paint applications, or then just make Bruce Wayne here look even better with the different paint applications and things like that. Aside from that, I frankly can't find too much reasoning to pick up this figure, except if you're a YouTuber like me and you're doing it for the memes and the lols. Other than that, if you, however, still want to get your own Drifter Bruce Wayne, be sure to use the affiliate links in the description below. They help out the channel quite a bit. Make sure to check out this other McFarlane toy figure review showing up on screen right now, and look forward to my Batman movie review coming out very soon. Until then, stay humble and take care.